The rattle of the saloon door shattered the tranquility of the afternoon as Josephine Walker hastily wiped away her tears, straightening her worn dress with trembling hands. The year was 1873, and Taylorsville, Montana Territory, offered little mercy to a woman alone with a child to feed. Yet here she stood, reporting for another grueling shift at the Silver Dollar, the only establishment willing to hire a widow with a reputation as tarnished as her husband's had been before a stray bullet claimed his life last winter. "You're late, Josie," barked Samuel Vickers, the rotund proprietor whose eyes never seemed to meet hers when he spoke. "Got 3 tables waiting and Peterson's boys just rode in from the cattle drive. They've got money burning holes in their pockets." "I'm sorry, Mr. Vickers. My son, Thomas. He's been feverish since dawn." Josephine tied her apron around her waist, securing the few coins she'd earned yesterday in the hidden pocket she'd sewn herself. "Your troubles ain't my troubles," Vickers replied, sliding a tray of whiskey glasses toward her. "Long as your boy don't die, I expect you here when your shift starts. Girl your age should be grateful for honest work." At 24, Josephine felt decades older. 3 years as Jacob Walker's wife, followed by 8 months of widowhood, had etched lines around her eyes that no amount of sleep could erase. Not that sleep came easily when Thomas's cough kept them both awake through the frigid Montana nights. The Silver Dollar pulsed with the chaotic energy of men released from the loneliness of the trail. Josephine navigated the sea of bodies, delivering drinks and deflecting wandering hands with practiced efficiency. Every unwanted touch, every lewd suggestion she endured brought another meal for Thomas, another log for their fire, another day of survival in a world that had little use for women without protection. "Well, ain't you a pretty little thing," slurred a trail hand, his breath reeking of cheap whiskey as he grabbed her wrist. "How much for a private dance, darling? I serve drinks, sir, nothing more." Josephine tried to pull away, keeping her voice steady despite the crushing grip on her arm. "Come now, everyone knows Vickers runs girls upstairs." His fingers dug deeper. "I got 2 months' wages right here." The lady said no. The voice cut through the cacophony like a knife, low, steady, and carrying the unmistakable authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed. Josephine turned to find herself looking up at a stranger. Tall and broad-shouldered, with eyes the color of a summer storm, he didn't wear the flashy attire of a gambler or the dust-covered clothes of a trail hand. His dark coat was well worn but clean, his hat pulled low over features that seemed carved from weathered stone. The drunk released her wrist, muttering curses as he retreated. The stranger didn't acknowledge his victory, merely nodding once before moving toward an empty table in the corner. "Thank you," Josephine said, approaching with a bottle. "What can I bring you? Coffee, if you have it." He removed his hat, revealing hair the color of chestnuts streaked with sun-bleached strands. "If not, water will do. We have coffee. It's awful, but it's hot." The smile that tugged at her lips surprised her. It had been months since she'd found cause for even this small humor. Perfect. His own smile transformed his face, softening the hard lines around his mouth. "I've had worse, I expect." As the evening wore on, Josephine found herself repeatedly glancing toward his corner. Unlike the others, he nursed his coffee, occasionally making notes in a small leather-bound book. He didn't gamble, didn't carouse. He simply observed, his eyes tracking every movement in the room with an intensity that suggested purpose rather than idle curiosity. Near midnight, as she cleared his table, he spoke again. "How much does Vickers pay you?" Josephine stiffened. "That's not a proper question, sir." "No, it's not," he conceded. "But I'm wondering if it's enough to keep that boy of yours in medicine." She nearly dropped her tray. "How do you know about my son? Small town. Word travels." He closed his book, tucking it inside his coat. "I've got a proposition for you, Mrs. Walker. A job offer." "I have a job. One that has you looking over your shoulder every minute and fighting off drunks. One that leaves your boy alone while you serve whiskey to men who don't respect you." He leaned forward. I need a housekeeper, someone to cook, clean, keep accounts. The pay is $20 a week, plus room and board for you and your boy. Josephine's heart hammered against her ribs. $20 was more than she made in a month at the saloon. Who are you? Name's Clayton Rhodes. He extended a weathered hand. I bought the old Henderson place outside town, turning it into a horse ranch. Why would you offer me this? You don't know me. Clayton Rhodes studied her with those storm cloud eyes. I know enough. I know you're here every day, working honest despite the circumstances. I know you don't take money for extra services, despite what some might assume about saloon girls. And I know that boy of yours needs a mother who isn't dead on her feet. Josephine's throat tightened. I can't just leave, Mr. Vickers. Vickers owes me a favor. He'll let you go without fuss. Clayton stood, placing his hat back on his head. Think about it, Mrs. Walker. I'll be back tomorrow for your answer. With that, he was gone, leaving Josephine clutching the empty coffee cup, her mind racing with possibilities she'd long since stopped allowing herself to consider. Dawn found Josephine at her small table, counting coins for the third time. Even with her best night's earnings, she had barely enough for the doctor's visit Thomas desperately needed. His cough had worsened, and the heat radiating from his small body terrified her. A knock at her door startled her from her calculations. She opened it to find Mrs. Abernathy, the elderly widow who watched Thomas while Josephine worked. He's worse, Josie, Mrs. Abernathy said without preamble. That fever's climbing, and he's starting to wheeze something terrible. Josephine's world narrowed to a pinpoint of fear. I need to get him to Dr. Bennett. That'll cost you, dear. Bennett doesn't work for promises. I have enough. The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. 30 minutes later, Josephine sat in Dr. Bennett's waiting room, clutching Thomas to her chest. His small frame burned against her, each labored breath tearing at her heart. Mrs. Walker. Dr. Bennett emerged from his office, his expression grave. Bring him in. The examination was brief but thorough. Pneumonia, doctor. Bennett pronounced, placing his stethoscope back in his bag. He needs medicine, rest, and better conditions than that drafty room you're renting. How much for the medicine? Josephine asked, dreading the answer. $5 for the tonic. Another $3 for my services today. He sighed at her stricken expression. Josie, this is the third time this winter. The boy needs proper care. I'm doing everything I can. She reached into her pocket, extracting the money she'd saved. It wasn't enough. Dr. Bennett's face softened. Pay me when you can. But Josie, something has to change. This cycle can't continue. Outside the doctor's office, Thomas cradled in her arms and the precious medicine bottle in her pocket, Josephine found herself face to face with Clayton Rhodes, Mrs. Walker. He touched the brim of his hat. Your boy's sick again. She nodded, too exhausted for pretense. Pneumonia. Clayton's gaze fell to Thomas, whose flushed face was partially hidden against his mother's shoulder. My offer stands. Better yet, it includes immediate care for your son. Josephine hesitated, years of hard lessons making her wary. What exactly would my duties be, Mr. Rhodes? Running the household. Cooking, cleaning, keeping the accounts in order. I've got 2 ranch hands who need feeding, and more coming as we expand the operation. He gestured toward the end of the street where a wagon waited. I'm heading back to the ranch now. There's a room ready for you both if you decide to come. The weight of Thomas in her arms, the heat of his fever seeping through her thin dress made the decision for her. I need to collect our things. Clayton nodded. I'll wait. Their belongings fit into a single trunk clothes, a few books, the quilt Josephine's mother had made for her wedding. As she closed the door on the cramped room that had been their home for the past 8 months, Josephine wondered if she was making a terrible mistake. But when Thomas coughed weakly against her neck, she knew that any risk was worth taking if it meant saving her son. The Henderson place, as locals still called it, lay 5 miles outside Taylorsville. As the wagon crested the final hill, Josephine caught her first glimpse of what would become her new home. The main house was larger than she expected, a 2-story structure with a wide porch and freshly painted shutters. Behind it stood a new barn and several corrals where horses grazed in the late afternoon sun. "It's not much yet," Clayton said, following her gaze, "but it will be. Henderson let the place go to ruin before he died, but the bones are good. Been working on the house first, making it livable." Inside, the house smelled of fresh paint and pine. Clayton led her upstairs to a corner bedroom where a fire already crackled in a small hearth. "Thought you might want your boy close to the warmth," he explained, setting down her trunk. "My room's at the other end of the hall." The ranch hands bunk in the building out back. Josephine laid Thomas on the bed, relief washing over her at the clean linens and solid roof above them. "Thank you, Mr. Rhodes, Clayton," he corrected. "If we're going to be living under the same roof, might as well use my given name." "Then you must call me Josephine," she hesitated. "Or Josie, if you prefer," he nodded. "Josie it is. Get your boy settled, kitchen's stocked, so help yourself. We can talk more in the morning." Left alone, Josephine administered Thomas's medicine, bathed his feverish face with cool water, and finally allowed herself to sink into the chair beside his bed. For the first time in months, she fell asleep without fear gnawing at her insides. Thomas's recovery was slow but steady. By the end of the first week, his fever had broken and his appetite began to return. By the second, he was strong enough to venture downstairs, where he watched with wide eyes as Josephine prepared meals for the ranch's growing workforce. Clayton proved to be a fair employer. He was gone most days from dawn until dusk, working alongside his men to build corrals, repair fences, and train the handful of horses he'd already acquired. When he returned in the evenings, dusty and often bruised from his work with half-wild mustangs, he treated Josephine with a respect she had almost forgotten existed. Their conversations over supper began as brief exchanges about household needs or ranch business, but gradually evolved into something more. He asked about her life before Taylorsville, listening intently as she spoke of growing up on a small farm in Missouri, of meeting Jacob Walker when she was barely 18, of following him west with stars in her eyes and promises of adventure in her heart. Jacob wasn't a bad man, she found herself explaining one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Thomas was already asleep upstairs, exhausted from his first day playing outdoors. Just restless, always chasing the next opportunity, the next big strike. "Gold fever claims more men than actual mining ever did," Clayton observed, whittling away at a small piece of wood that was gradually taking the shape of a horse. "He left us alone too often, took risks he shouldn't have." She sighed, remembering. The night he was killed, he was in a card game he couldn't afford. The man who shot him claimed Jacob was cheating. "Were you there?" She shook her head. "At home with Thomas, the sheriff brought the news at dawn." She twisted the simple gold band she still wore. "Left us with nothing but debts and a bad reputation." Clayton was silent for a long moment, his knife paused mid-stroke. "Your husband's mistakes shouldn't define you, Josie. In places like Taylorsville they do," she smiled sadly. "Why do you think Vickers hired me?" "He knew no decent establishment would have me. Their loss." Clayton resumed his carving. "This ranch needs someone with sense running the household. You've made more improvements in 3 weeks than I managed in 3 months." The compliment warmed her more than it should have. "It's nothing. Just proper organizing." "It's everything," he countered, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "This place, I want it to be something, not just a business but a home." "Why here?" she asked. "You're obviously educated. You could have settled somewhere easier." Clayton's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I've had enough of easy places. After the war I needed somewhere. Clean, new," he shrugged. "Montana seemed far enough from Virginia to start over. You fought for the Confederacy?" she asked, trying to keep judgment from her voice. "Enlisted with the Union when I was 18. Spent 4 years seeing the worst men can do to each other." He set aside his carving. "Came west afterwards, worked as a marshal in Colorado for a spell. Then decided I'd rather build something than keep the peace for folks who mostly didn't want it kept." Josephine studied him in the fading light, seeing beyond the weathered exterior to the man beneath one carrying his own wounds, his own regrets. "We all have our reasons for starting over," she said softly. His gaze lingered on her face, something unspoken passing between them. Then he cleared his throat and stood. "Getting late. I'll be riding to town tomorrow for supplies. Is there anything you need? Just flour and sugar if you're going to the mercantile," she replied, suddenly conscious of how alone they were beneath the vast Montana sky. "Consider it done." He tipped his hat in that formal way of his. "Good night, Josie." "Good night, Clayton." As spring yielded to summer, the ranch transformed. Clayton's vision began to take shape as new horses arrived, first a pair of magnificent breeding mares from Kentucky, then a stallion whose lineage could be traced back to the finest Arabian stock. The corrals filled with young horses purchased from neighboring ranchers or captured from wild herds that roamed the mountains. Thomas thrived in the clean air and open spaces, his formerly pale cheeks now ruddy with health. He trailed after Clayton whenever permitted, absorbing every detail of ranch life with the sponge-like curiosity of a 5-year-old. To Josephine's surprise and gratitude, Clayton welcomed the boy's company, teaching him to ride a gentle pony and answering his endless questions with patience. "Mama, Clay says I can help name the new foal when it comes," Thomas announced one evening, bursting into the kitchen where Josephine was preparing supper. "He says she's gonna have it any day now. That's wonderful, sweetheart." She brushed flour from her hands to smooth his unruly hair. "But remember to call him Mr. Rhodes, it's more respectful." "He told me to call him Clay," Thomas insisted with the stubborn certainty of childhood. "Said Mr. makes him feel old." Clayton appeared in the doorway, his expression sheepish. "Hope you don't mind." "Seemed silly to stand on ceremony with a boy who follows me like my own shadow." Josephine felt a flutter in her chest at the affectionate way Clayton's hand rested on Thomas's shoulder. "I don't mind. It's good for him to have a man to look up to." Something flashed in Clayton's eyes, hope, perhaps, or longing. But before he could respond, a ranch hand burst through the door. "Boss, that mare's foaling and there's trouble." The peaceful moment shattered as Clayton rushed out, Thomas hot on his heels until Josephine called him back. For the next 2 hours, she distracted the boy with stories and chores, all while straining to hear any news from the barn. When Clayton finally returned, his face was drawn with exhaustion, but his eyes shone with triumph. "Mare and foal are both fine," he announced, accepting the coffee Josephine pressed into his hands. "Breech birth. Thought we might lose them both for a while there." "Can I see, please?" Thomas begged, practically vibrating with excitement. Clayton looked to Josephine, who nodded her permission. "Just for a few minutes. It's past your bedtime." As the pair headed back to the barn, Josephine watched through the window, her heart full at the sight of her son's small hand clasped trustingly in Clayton's larger one. It was becoming increasingly difficult to remember that this arrangement was merely employment, that the warmth she felt in Clayton's presence was inappropriate, dangerous even. Later that night, after Thomas had finally fallen asleep, filled with wonder at the new life he'd witnessed, Josephine found Clayton still in the barn. He sat on a hay bale, keeping vigil over the mare and her wobbly-legged foal. "You should rest," she said softly, offering a fresh cup of coffee. "You've been up nearly 20 hours. Just want to make sure they're settled." He accepted the coffee with a grateful nod. "Your boys got away with animals, kept that mare calm just by talking to her while I was elbow-deep trying to turn the foal. He's never been happier than he is here." She settled beside him on the hay, propriety momentarily forgotten in the intimate darkness of the barn. "Neither have I." Clayton's gaze found hers searching. "Are you happy here, Josie? Truly, how could I not be? You've given us safety, security. Thomas is healthier than he's ever been." "That's not what I asked." His voice dropped lower. "Are you happy?" The question peeled away her carefully constructed defenses. "Yes," she whispered. "For the first time in years, I remember what happiness feels like. His hand found hers in the dimness, rough calluses against her softer skin. "I never expected you," he confessed. "When I bought this place, I had a plan. Horses, land, a business to build. Nothing in that plan prepared me for a woman like you walking into the silver dollar. A desperate widow with a sick child." She asked, her attempt at lightness faltering as his fingers tightened around hers. "A woman with courage enough for 10 men," he corrected. "Beautiful despite every hardship, kind despite every reason not to be." He drew a shaky breath. "Josie, I know it's too soon. I know you're still wearing another man's ring, but I need you to know that what started as an employment arrangement has become something else for me." Josephine's heart thundered in her chest. "Clayton, you don't need to say anything," he interrupted gently. "I'm not asking for promises, just know that whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready, there's a place for you here that has nothing to do with cooking or cleaning." Tears pricked behind her eyelids. "I don't know how to be anything but Jacob Walker's widow." "Then be Josephine," he said simply. "Just be yourself and let time take care of the rest." In the soft glow of the lantern light, with the quiet sounds of the horses around them, Josephine allowed herself to lean against his shoulder, taking comfort in his solid presence and the future it might represent. As summer faded into autumn, the rhythm of ranch life continued its steady beat. Clayton's business grew as word spread of his skill with difficult horses. Buyers came from as far as Denver to purchase his stock, and the ranch hands now numbered 6 all-decent men who treated Josephine with respect bordering on reverence after tasting her cooking. Thomas started school in Taylorsville, riding in with Clayton 3 days a week and returning with tales of new friends and new knowledge. On the days he remained at the ranch, Josephine taught him reading and figures, surprised at how quickly he absorbed everything she offered. The change in their circumstances was evident in 100 small ways: new clothes that fit properly, books ordered from catalogs in Helena, a piano delivered one surprising afternoon that Clayton insisted was for the house, though they all knew it was because Josephine had once mentioned playing as a girl. In town, attitudes shifted gradually. Where once Josephine had been met with sideways glances and whispers, now the merchants greeted her warmly, the pastor's wife invited her to join the quilting circle, and even Dr. Bennett remarked on the remarkable improvement in Thomas's health. "Mrs. Rhodes runs a fine household," she overheard Mrs. Abernathy telling another woman outside the mercantile one afternoon. "I'm not Mrs. Rhodes," Josephine corrected automatically, though the name sent an unexpected thrill through her. "I'm his housekeeper." Mrs. Abernathy's knowing smile only deepened Josephine's confusion. "Of course, dear, whatever you say." That evening, as she prepared supper, Josephine found herself distracted by the conversation. Clayton had never pressed her about his declaration in the barn months earlier, maintaining a respectful distance that both relieved and frustrated her. They had fallen into a comfortable familiarity, sharing meals, discussing ranch business, watching Thomas grow stronger daily, but the unspoken possibility between them remained just that. Unspoken. "You're burning the biscuits," Clayton observed, appearing in the kitchen doorway with an armful of firewood. Josephine startled, yanking the tray from the oven with a muttered exclamation. "I was wool gathering, I suppose." "Must have been important thoughts to sacrifice your famous biscuits," he teased, setting the wood beside the stove. "Anything you want to share?" She hesitated, then asked, "Do people in town think we're married?" Clayton's expression shifted from surprise to careful neutrality. "Some might. Does that bother you?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Today Mrs. Abernathy called me Mrs. Rhodes, and I didn't know what to make of it." He leaned against the doorframe, studying her with those intense gray eyes. "Would it be so terrible, bearing my name?" The directness of the question stole her breath. "Clayton, I love you, Josie." The simple declaration filled the kitchen, leaving no room for misunderstanding. "I think I've loved you since that first night at the Silver Dollar, when you offered me terrible coffee with the first real smile I'd seen in years." Josephine's hands trembled as she set aside the ruined biscuits. "Love isn't always enough. I've learned that lesson. It is when it comes with respect, partnership, and a shared vision." He crossed the room, taking her flour-dusted hands in his. "I'm not asking you to forget Jacob. I'm asking you to remember yourself, the woman you are now, not the girl who followed a dreamer west. And Thomas. He's not your blood. He's been mine in every way that matters since the day you both arrived." Clayton's voice roughened with emotion. "That boy is the son of my heart, if not my body." Tears spilled down Josephine's cheeks. "I'm afraid," she whispered. "Of what?" "Of believing in happiness again. Of trusting that the ranch, our life here won't disappear like smoke." Clayton reached up, gently brushing away her tears with his thumb. "Some things are built to last, Josie. This ranch, this home we've made together, my love for you and that boy." His lips curved into a tender smile. "I'm offering you my name because I want the world to know what I already do, that you're the heart of everything I'm building here." In that moment, with the autumn sun streaming through the windows and the scent of burning biscuits filling the air, Josephine Walker made her choice. Rising onto her tiptoes, she pressed her lips to Clayton's in a kiss that tasted of flour and promises and the sweet possibility of tomorrow. "Yes," she breathed against his mouth. "Yes, I'll take your name." Their wedding took place on the first snowfall of winter, a simple ceremony in the ranch house with Thomas as their only attendant, proudly carrying the rings on a small pillow Josephine had embroidered for the occasion. The pastor from Taylorsville officiated, and a handful of neighbors and ranch hands gathered to witness the union. Josephine wore a dress of deep blue velvet, Clayton's gift, ordered from a dressmaker in Helena, with her mother's locket at her throat, and flowers from the ranch's small greenhouse woven into her upswept hair. When she appeared at the top of the stairs, Clayton's expression of wonder and devotion nearly brought her to tears again. "You're beautiful," he murmured as she reached his side. "You're not so bad yourself, Mr. Rhodes," she whispered back, taking in his clean-shaven face and new suit with appreciative eyes. Thomas, solemn with the importance of his role, stood between them, his small face serious until Clayton winked at him, drawing forth a giggle that lightened the reverent mood. The vows they exchanged were traditional, but spoken with such conviction that even the most hardened of the ranch hands discreetly wiped their eyes. When the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, Clayton's kiss was gentle, respectful of their audience, but filled with promise for later. The celebration afterward was boisterous, tables groaning with food prepared by neighboring women, music from a fiddle player Clayton had hired from town, and plenty of good whiskey for the men. As darkness fell, the guests departed, leaving the new family alone in their home. "I have something for you," Clayton told Thomas after the last wagon disappeared down the drive. "Consider it a wedding gift for all of us." From his desk drawer, he withdrew an official-looking document. Josephine peered over his shoulder, gasping when she recognized what it was. "Adoption papers," she breathed. Clayton knelt before Thomas, holding out the document for the boy's inspection. "These say that if you want, you can legally be my son. You'd be Thomas Rhodes, same as your mama is now Josephine Rhodes." Thomas's eyes widened. "You want to be my pa for real?" "More than anything in the world," Clayton answered, his voice thick with emotion. "But only if you want it too." Thomas launched himself into Clayton's arms with such force that they both tumbled backward onto the rug. "Yes, I want you to be my pa." Over the boy's head, Clayton's eyes met Josephine's, shining with unshed tears of joy. In that moment, watching the two people she loved most in the world embrace, Josephine felt the last shadows of her past finally release their hold on her heart. Later that night, with Thomas asleep in his room down the hall, Josephine stood by the bedroom window, watching snowflakes dance in the moonlight. Clayton's arms slipped around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. "Having second thoughts, Mrs. Rhodes," he teased gently. She turned in his embrace, winding her arms around his neck. Not a single one, Mr. Rhodes. His kiss was different now, unhurried, confident, filled with a passion that had simmered between them for months. Josephine surrendered to him, to the love that had grown from the most unexpected of beginnings. In the years that followed, the Rhodes ranch flourished. Clayton's reputation as a horse breeder spread throughout the territory and beyond, bringing prosperity that allowed them to expand the house, hire more hands, and even build a small schoolhouse where Josephine taught not only Thomas but the children of their workers and neighbors. Thomas grew tall and strong, the spitting image of Clayton in his mannerisms though not his blood. At 12, he could ride as well as any hand on the ranch and showed his father's gift with difficult horses. At 15, he declared his intention to attend university in the East, a dream his parents encouraged with pride and financial support. 2 more children joined their family: James, born a year after their wedding, and Elizabeth, who arrived 2 years later. Both inherited Clayton's storm-gray eyes and Josephine's quiet determination. The ranch rang with children's laughter, with music from Josephine's piano, with the sounds of a home built on love and respect. On their 10th anniversary, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset just as they had on so many evenings before, Clayton presented Josephine with a leather-bound journal. "What's this?" she asked, running her fingers over the embossed cover. "Open it," he urged. Inside, she found page after page filled with Clayton's neat handwriting. The first entry was dated the day they met at the Silver Dollar. "You've kept a journal all these years?" she asked, touched by the unexpected sentiment from her practical husband. "Only about you." He took her hand, the same calloused fingers that had first reached for hers in a dimly lit barn a decade earlier. "I wanted to remember everything: how you looked that first night, how Thomas called me Clay for the first time, how you felt in my arms on our wedding day." He smiled. "Figured when we're old and gray, we might want to remember how it all began. As if I could ever forget," she murmured, leaning against his shoulder. "You saved us, Clayton." "No, Josie." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "You saved me. I had land and horses and plans, but you gave me a family. A purpose beyond ambition." His arm tightened around her shoulders. "Every day, I thank whatever twist of fate brought me to that saloon on exactly the right evening." In the distance, their children's voices carried on the summer breeze as they chased fireflies across the sprawling yard. The ranch house glowed golden in the setting sun, solid and enduring as the love that had built it. Josephine Rhodes, once a desperate widow serving drinks at the Silver Dollar Saloon, closed her eyes and offered a silent prayer of gratitude for second chances, for courage found in the darkest moments, and for the man who had offered her not just employment, but his heart and his name. "I love you, Clayton Rhodes," she whispered. "And I love you, Josephine Rhodes," he answered, his voice carrying the same wonder it had the first time he'd spoken those words in her kitchen so many years ago. "Today, tomorrow, and for all the days we have left." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, they remained on the porch, hands intertwined, watching over the life they had created together, a life that had begun with a simple job offer, and had grown into something neither could have imagined that fateful night in Taylorsville.